You
Yeah.
know, talking about Heavy Eyes as well, since of course that was your most recent release, and like you said, I could see like that Ronnie Spector or like the
Yeah.
Supremes. Um, so yeah, how did you decide to kind of go in that direction with that song?
You know, um, I think it was also sort of subconsciously that sound was in my ears from, I had the privilege of singing with my father at the garden. And I did, do my own rendition of Say Goodbye to Hollywood, which is very in that it's a very particular 60s sound. And if you really were to research it and look at sort of the history of it and how it came to be, it's called the Wall of Sound.
Hmm.
And it's definitively Phil Spector, who was Ronnie Spector's producer and husband, was trying to really find this. I don't know, like this. It's like almost got a little bit of a boom, but it's very infectious. It sounds really rich. It just sounds great. And then they termed it the wall of sound. And you do a very specific thing to the vocals. And I don't know. That's for the mixing and mastering guys. They did a great job on my record where they put just that little effect that they did too with Ronnie Spector, and it makes it sound like that 60s. It just gives it that nostalgia immediately. So I was really specifically going after that sound. And it helps. When you have a very specific reference, it helps you frame the song, the production, everything. I knew I wanted to do some of my own harmonies. Um, my producer, I've two amazing producers for the record. I worked with Tommy Burns, who you may have seen him with
I've
Dad at the
met
Garden,
him. Yep.
Dad's guitarist, and who's incidentally a great producer, and Tony Bruno, who put my whole band together. He's a musical genius, plays every instrument. Anyways, Tommy said, "Hey, let's add a glockenspiel to the track." And that's when you hear the da da da, almost sounds like a little Christmas bells, like a holiday feeling. So little details like that really help to I think bring a song like that to life. And of course, you have to have some strings, you have to have a piano bass, um, for that type of sound, that vintage sound. But and I'm very comfortable living in that vintage world. If anything, Riverside Way was more of a departure for me because it's a bit more edgy and modern, you could say, but I'm such a nostalgic that I get very, into that more kind of feeling. And Heavy Eyes just kind of wrote itself. It was very natural. I really wanted the bridge to build a lot. And um, from anywhere between, I was thinking of, anyone who had a heart, which I believe was written by Burt Bacharach and sung by Dionne Warwick. Ruler of My Heart, Irma Thomas, At Last, and then He Kissed Me, The Crystals, all of these amazing. I mean, there was so many great like bops that came out of the 60s. It's incredible,
Hmm.
And so I really wanted to directly emulate that sound and do my own 60s bop. And it's a ballad, but there's a swing to it, right? The drum part obviously helps, but there's a swing to it. And I wanted it to be very romantic, very kind of, the honeymoon phase of love. And I wanted to capture that innocence, particularly after, coming out with Riverside Way, which was less innocent, more kind of hard charging and on the edge and fast paced. Um, and I think you could say Heavy Eyes was in a more comfortable realm, particularly for people who listen to say dad's music. That it makes more sense to them, and I think you could argue probably it was more well received by some of his listeners. But you still have to do your own thing and take risks, whether it's like there's room for everything. There's room for Riverside Way, and maybe a younger, more indie crowd prefers that, and then there's room for a more classic nostalgic song like Heavy Eyes.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the beauty of music, I think. And, with this EP, I really want to write something for everyone. So no two songs are alike.
Hmm.
They all live in a completely different kind of musical entity and world.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And it was also, I wanted to ask you about Heavy Eyes because, of course, you got the music video with it. And I understand you shot it on film. Is that correct?
We shot it all on vintage film. I wanted people to feel like they were taking a time machine back right to 19, I don't know, 1963, but 1963 and 1965, because a lot happened. By the late 60s, you got more experimental, more hippie. We were still speaking between 1960 and 1965 for that song, I think is where that kind of marinates. Um, and even thinking about To Sir with Love, which I sang for Dad at the Garden, one of the best songs by sung by Lulu, who's an incredible singer. I was thinking a lot about that style, and just I don't know, it just does something to for me. It lights me up. But and I wanted that feel good moment. There's a lot of darker songs on the record. And nobody loves an angsty, melancholic moment more than me. You could say the same for Dad. Some of my favorite stuff is his darker stuff. Where's the orchestra and Captain Jack, right? But this was the bright spot for me on the record. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
and yes, vintage film. I'm sorry, I should give a shout out to amazing director, Oliver Halfin, who only shoots on vintage film. Like that's like his specialty. So it was a great, collaboration because he really appreciated. And I was thinking of the game Candyland, like everything's very pastel. There's a sweetness. There's sort of like a teenage innocence. I pulled a lot of influence with the video from Bye Bye Birdie, which is one of my childhood favorites. Where I'm laying on the bed with the phone, and I was thinking of what's the story, Morning Glory, Bobby Rydell. So it was a complete take you back in time. Not a hint of nothing modern at all in the video.
Hmm.
Not one drop of anything modern was there. So
Yeah.
you know,
No, that's cool. And I take pictures on film, so it's yeah, I think it looks better than digital anyways. So yeah,
yeah,
really cool touch to have that in the video.
it does
And
look better. It does. And as a girl, vanity purposes, it actually blurs little flaws because it's a little bit blurrier.
right.
So it's almost like its own built-in filter, vintage film. It's kind of cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I've seen on Instagram you've been sharing some previews of your next release. And so
Yeah.
is and just from talking with you here, so is the plan to put out a record with these songs that you're releasing as singles right now?
So everything, all 5 songs are going to be, I'm doing waterfall releases which is one song at a time, because I feel like this is such an ADD world and it's better to hold people's attention via social media, YouTube, with one song at a time. But all 5 of these songs, starting with Riverside Way, Heavy Eyes, Only Just a Moment is coming out next. And then I have 2 more. So I've got 5 original songs that will eventually, hopefully by the end of this year, we'll see how we do with the releases. But they're all going to come out as an EP package called Tales from a Winding Tower, which is a very kind of psychedelic nod, a little bit of a Beatles nod there. But so this is all a part of my EP. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. No, that I know all about that. That yeah, in this day and age, like a single release is sometimes better than just doing a full record. But it's
Oh,
nice
yeah. Oh,
nice to
yeah.
know that yeah, you are working towards that full package at the end of all of this, which is cool.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. No, I just think, I don't know. Again, I always see myself as an outsider to the industry. but I don't know that people listen to full records anymore, you know. It makes me a little sad. It would be nice, but not every album is Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, or even I'm trying to think of a recent some albums that were great where people listened back to back. Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, Title, Fiona Apple, all these, Sheryl Crow, Tuesday Night Music Club. But that was the 90s. This is a different time now. And I feel like everything moves so quickly. There's so much content, there's so much to keep up with. And every song on this EP is so very different that I wanted to give each song its own kind of vignette, and moment and release and moment to shine. And yeah, hopefully it'll hold people's attentions better. And every song has its own video too.
Yeah.
So every song has its own little story and its own little world, and hopefully its own audience, because no two are alike. And it seems to me, to your point, a lot of artists are doing that now, where they're, releasing single by single. So
Hmm.
it seems
Yeah.
to be a
Yeah. Well, I mean, and to look at it the other way, of course, like vinyl has come back. So I think there is a little bit of like, people listening to
oh,
records and stuff. So,
so
mhm.
to your point, this is going to be out on vinyl. Once
Perfect.
once the full EP drops and it's going to be digital first, then vinyl 100%, because I am one of those music lovers too. I want to hold something in my hand. I want to see the cover. I want to have the insert pull out. I want to hold the record. And so that's going to be for the real nostalgics. Um, I don't have a date yet on that, but it's definitely coming after we do the digital release. And I pushed for that. I said we got to get this out on vinyl, because a lot of the songs really are a throwback, and it's the best, we're
Yeah.
I think, and I think there is a lot of people miss that. A lot of people miss that. I know you and I are not the only ones. So
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.